Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Caitlin Kutza and I am a student of Communication and Media at Clarkson University. Today we are hosting a conversation with Valerie Dana, a counselor and advocate, and Caitlin Hill, the legal advocate with Renewal House. Joining them in conversation is Donna Seymour of the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women. Welcome. Donna, will you get us started?
Thank you, Caitlin. Well, welcome to Caitlin and to Valerie. I'm very glad that you were able to join us today. We're almost at the end of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is always October every year. But of course, we know the work that you do and your colleagues at Renewal House do goes on every day of the year. Valerie, to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about what Domestic Violence Awareness Month entails?
Sure. For us, Domestic Violence Month is about kind of the survivors, honoring all the survivors of domestic violence, making sure they are recognized, making sure people know where to go, so educating the community about resources and what domestic violence is, so if people are victims or people feel like they know people who are, that they know where to reach out. And like I said, a lot of community awareness. So we do a lot of radio, public service announcements and things like that to just get the whole community involved as much as we can.
And I've certainly seen newspaper articles and things like that in local media as well. What are some of the things that Renewal House has done this year to highlight Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
We have done radio interviews, like you said, the newspaper articles, highlighting kind of what we do and the things that our agency offers, as well as hosting fundraisers to get the word out. We had a Witches' Night Out, October 4th. We had our own recognition dinner where community members were invited to come, and there were speakers. A survivor was actually there speaking, talking about her own experiences and, again, kind of what our agency does across the board to all the members of the community. We had a zombie prom on the 18th, which also was, again, kind of fundraising to help victims of domestic violence and sexual assault in the community.
Sounds like fun fundraising.
Absolutely.
We've also set some tables up around the community in the public service buildings like the courthouse and the One Stop Career Center, just getting the word out and letting people know about Renewal House and what services we can offer them.
So you do tabling events. Do you also do those at local colleges as well, so that they get to know you and your services?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, also today I actually gave a presentation at SUNY Potsdam, and we've had a number of our advocates going to the different colleges to let them know that our services are available to them also.
Oh, that's excellent. Valerie, you're a counselor advocate. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what that position entails?
Sure. Well, it's considered counselor advocate, the counselor part being that we offer emotional support counseling sessions, one-on-one, kind of peer-to-peer counseling with anybody who's interested that comes in that is a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault. And the advocacy part is kind of encompasses a lot. It's basically anything that relates to domestic violence, sexual assault of the victim, kind of their needs. Basically, it can be anything from court appointments, follow-ups, helping them find a place if they've left a domestic violence situation and are trying to get, their own apartment and get things started in that, anything that route, setting up services through Department of Social Services. Lots of things. There's a lot that it encompasses. I also work with children quite a bit.
Okay.
That's part of it too, so adults and children.
So you're working with families more than just plain individuals.
Absolutely.
In this case. It's a family situation.
And lots of presentations in there too. So.
Yeah, okay. Caitlin, you're the legal advocate at Renewal House, so your job's a little bit different. Can you describe for us what you do?
So everyone at Renewal House undergoes the same 40-hour training when they first start, and they're all trained to do essentially the same things. But me as the legal advocate get to go to court more often and accompany our victims when they need to go to court for something. I oftentimes give them legal information and legal resources that they might need, help them obtain orders of protection or petition for custody. I also liaise with the local law enforcement agencies when we're dealing with specific cases and help them fill out OVS applications, which is our way of saying the New York State Office of Victim Services offers reimbursement for victims that are victims of crime, and a lot of times that can be our clients, our domestic violence or sexual assault victims. So I try to help, every counselor tries to help them fill those out, but I help specifically in obtaining crime report numbers and sending those off to OVS so that they can get reimbursed.
So you're working more directly with police agencies than maybe some of your colleagues would be in a case like that.
I try to.
One of the things that I want to speak with you about specifically, Caitlin, is that we read a lot in local media about domestic violence and sexual assault cases, and sometimes reading the reports is almost like a form of double victimization because someone has been through a horrific situation, they've been the victim of a crime, and the next thing they know, everything about their case has been splashed in the media, and so it's not only hard on them, but of course it's hard on the other members of the family. Often, especially as you both know, if there are children involved, there's really nothing worse than having to go to school the morning after your family private trauma has been spilled to the local media. Do you see that has an effect on people wanting to even ask for services in the first place and then following through on a legal case if it gets to court in terms of slowing down the process or making people reluctant to go all the way to the end because of that possibility of media light on themselves and their families?
Yeah, I see that sometimes, and I think it is an issue that we as a community and as a society on a whole really need to address because I think it can be an issue and it can be a barrier to people accessing services, especially when newspapers are publishing victims' names. They may be well-meaning by doing that, and they may be trying to bring light to the situation, but it can actually be very detrimental for the victim's safety. And it's an embarrassing situation because the fact is we've come a long way when dealing with domestic violence, but there's still so much more to go, and there's still a stigma associated with domestic violence victims and sexual assault victims. So when you're publishing their names in the paper, that's an added level of re-victimization that's happening to them. And they may be going into work the next day, and now all of their colleagues are knowing this very personal, very private thing. And likewise in sexual assault cases, I think that there are laws preventing newspapers from publishing minors' names in the paper, but at the same time, if you publish the defendant's name, which is inevitable, it's going to happen, but we are from a small town, and a lot of times they do end up knowing who the victim is just by the fact that we're in a small town. So yeah, people, you get to school the next day, and even though that girl may be underage and you may not really know her name, like kids talk and they know what happened.
They
so
certainly do.
I think it can be very damaging.
Yeah, I think it can be as well, and it's. In fact, I saw a report just this week that this is something that's becoming a bigger problem with online media, let alone print media in the same community. But an online media has very little reason to care about what its neighbors think, the way perhaps your local hometown paper might possibly care. Valerie, let's spend a few minutes talking about the services that Renewal House provides and the kind of things that you deal with. Can you help us to understand what domestic violence is according to the definitions that you use and how that might differ from sexual assault?
Sure. Domestic violence, the official term or definition is a pattern of coercive behavior where one family member attempts to gain and maintain power and control over another family member, which in this case, power and control is the big end goal of the abuser. For domestic violence, sexual assault, as we know, is a little bit different, but sexual assault or sexual abuse can be part of domestic violence. So, but that's our definition that we use in the office, and we talk a lot about all the different types of abuse, whether it be social, economic, sexual, like I explained, psychological, physical, all of those. It's not just the physical abuse that we consider you being a victim. We have a lot of people come to us who aren't sure if they're victims. They say, we hear a lot, I'm not physically, he doesn't hit me or it's not physical, but once they start explaining a little bit, and you can say, well, but this is abuse, So making sure people understand what the abuse of domestic violence actually encompasses, because it's not just the one component, you know.
So it's a whole range of behaviors that all
Absolutely.
go around this idea of control.
And that it's a pattern too, you
That's
know.
right.
You'll see it, and we start talking to people about what that pattern is, being that there's generally about 3 steps. You have the eggshell period, where it's kind of like the build-up, where you can kind of feel that the event is coming, and then you have the outburst, or whatever the big event may be, and then you'll see that, and that can last, you know, anywhere from a day to a few weeks, however long. You know, it depends on the situation. And then you'll see the honeymoon period, where it kind of seems like they're apologetic, you know, things seem to be going really well on the mend, and then it happens over again. That's the cycle. So we see, and as we start walking victims that we've seen through it, they can pick out those parts, and they can see that. So that's a big part too, the pattern.
And they certainly can identify the trigger events that they know that are going to be something that might start the whole cycle all over again. So what kind of services does Renewal House offer to domestic violence and sexual assault victims that help them identify a lot of these behaviors that you've just described, as well as come to terms with how they can change their situation and their family situation?
We offer, like I talked about a little bit before, being the counselor, the counseling side of things. So the one-on-one sessions where we can sit down and talk about any of their current concerns that they might have, any of the past things that have happened, or whatever's current that they want to talk about in that session. We let them lead it. It's kind of based on their needs at the time, because as we know, from day to day, that can change. We offer advocacy and accompaniment to any kind of appointments. For orders of protection, any kind of possible custody appointments that might come up.
Even police accompaniment, if they're going to the police station to make a report, they can even call us before they do that. And, you know, and hopefully police stations are reaching out to us and saying, you know, we have a victim here, and could an advocate come down? I would love for that to happen more often than it does, but definitely we can be there, because it's difficult talking to police officers and telling them what's going on.
Do you find that that local police agencies have officers that are trained in this, or can they just sort of end up with whoever happens to be on duty that day, or do they have officers who are really have received special training in order to be able to talk to victims and kind of work through the process with them a little bit?
I'm not really sure what their training entails. I think you probably have all of the police officers, or have some sort of general training relating to domestic violence, and then I'm sure you have others in the agency that maybe focus on it a little bit more and maybe attend more trainings throughout the year. But, generally when you are dealing with a domestic violence situation and they're calling the police, which is actually pretty rare, it gets, not a lot of victims call the police, domestic violence and sexual assault.
At first.
Yeah, not
Probably,
at first.
yeah.
They're the most underreported crimes. So they're not really likely to just pick up the phone and call the police. So when they do, you know that they're really reaching out for help. And, a lot of times it is, who knows what time of the day it might be, it might be 2 o'clock in the morning, and maybe that person who's more trained in domestic violence isn't there, so they just need to deal with who they get.
So that actually sounds like a good opportunity for Renewal House and other crisis agencies like you to work more with police, especially on the training side of things, in order to make sure everybody has at least the basic skills and knows to call, that there is help available.
Absolutely.
So,
And we did a training not long ago, I know, with St. Lawrence University's campus safety. We did a training with them, so that kind of what we offer, a protocol type thing, maybe helpful hints when it comes to dealing with victims, because sometimes the first questions that might pop into our head that we want to ask people aren't necessarily those right questions. So kind of just like little hints to offer, and we can offer those trainings. It's very rare that we're not able to get out, so if anybody was interested, we'd be more than happy to do that, to just kind of educate and help them know what we're about. And so I know that obviously there's their own protocol to follow for a lot of things, but just kind of helping and maybe giving a hint about certain things and ways to question when it comes to it.
It can be useful because we're strictly a victim-centered agency, which I think is kind of unique with us. We do, we will do whatever it is that our victim, is asking for help with. If our agency specifically can't help her with that, then we'll refer her to somebody that can. But, getting it from the actual victim's perspective and what she goes through, I think is just really important when, police officers or just anyone in the general public are dealing with domestic violence victims, because you kind of need to understand her plight to know how to handle her through this, whatever she's going through right now.
That's right. I'm just curious. I know that SUNY Canton offers their police academy every so often for training of police officers and campus safety officers and I guess everybody but the state police really at this point. So do you ever get called in to give presentations to them for police academy?
Yeah, I think it's on a regular basis. I know that our boss, Eileen, she's our executive director. I know that she goes and does the trainings at SUNY Canton. I'm not sure how regular that is. Val and I have only been there about a year.
Okay, so you haven't been tapped for police academy yet, right?
No, they call it the big guns for that.
Yes, exactly. Well, here's a question that I want to actually direct to both of you and get your get some feedback on it. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a AAUW regional conference, and Dr. Catherine Cerulli of the University of Rochester, who's a 30-year veteran in the field of domestic violence, was giving a presentation, and she said something that really struck me, and it was that family social trauma has been put into the criminal justice system, which is adversarial by nature. So given the discussions about the number of domestic violence cases that we have and how that operates between police agencies and shelters and service providers, do you think that the criminal justice system is the most effective way to deal with this, or would there be other ways that would actually help solve problems faster and easier?
I mean, the criminal justice system definitely can help, but it's important to recognize its limitations. I was just dealing with a woman recently who was in need of an order of protection, which a criminal act did occur, and she wasn't granted an order of protection. So I tried to reach out to the law enforcement agencies to inquire why an order of protection wasn't issued, because when you're dealing with orders of protections, just in my opinion, a criminal one probably is, if a criminal act has occurred and they can issue one, then that's probably the most effective and the most immediate at the time. For whatever reason, they didn't issue one, so and they weren't going to after I talked to them, so then I helped her through the family court process of getting an order of protection, which takes a little bit longer. And I mean, you can request that it be heard faster, but a lot of times it could take, a week or even longer to get an order of protection through family court. And even in that instance, I mean, an order of protection can be good from a victim standpoint, because you're stepping up and the victim is, empowering herself and really making a stand, and she's reaching out for help, and she's saying that, she's not accepting of this behavior and it needs to stop. The downfall to that is, in reality, when it comes down to it, an order of protection is a piece of paper. Right. So when that time comes, when he does come after her after she's gotten the order of protection, it's really not much use to her in the moment. What she can do is call the police, and he's now violated that order. In addition to committing another crime, he's violated that order. So, hopefully he'll get more charges put on him because of that. But, in the actual moment, no, is a piece of paper going to protect her life? I mean, no, and that's just the hard truth of it. But I do think that it can help, but that's why we need a coordinated response from the community, and we need agencies like Renewal House that can help out and provide them with their immediate needs, especially because not all victims go to the police or want to go through the court system, and they just need a safe place to stay, maybe, and they just need help getting on their feet and going through counseling and, picking up their lives and putting the pieces back together, and that's where Renewal House can help out, and other members of the community too, other community agencies help out.
And of course, as we know, these situations don't happen overnight. It takes a long time before one of these situations builds up to the point where there is a crisis, and then it may take several crises before someone actually goes for help.
And sometimes we've seen victims who, this is kind of where one of those limitations come in, have people, or their abuser may be part, or they know people who are in the different agencies, police agencies, law enforcement agencies. So that's not somewhere where they want to reach out for help, because that's a limitation, that's a barrier they're facing. So that's not always an option, an immediate option for them. So that's when, Renewal House can come in and provide what options that there are to help them through, so they don't feel stuck, because abusers sometimes use that as leverage. Where are you going to go for help? I am the help, I'm in the agency, but, it's not. There is help out there, is what we're trying to make sure people know, that it's not, that they're not stuck. There's other ways, and we can provide those and help them.
And a lot of victims just don't want to use legal system for their own reasons. And, we definitely understand that, and we don't pressure them. I think the main thing about Renewal House is that we offer support in a non-judgmental environment.
Okay.
And, because we want our victims to come to us, and we want them to ask for help, and we want to be able to be there to provide the help, because we know that an average victim is going to leave her abuser, 7 to 9 times before she actually leaves him for good. And each time she leaves him, she's getting a little bit more stronger. And we want to make sure that we're still there. We're not judging her, and we're not saying, why could you go back there? We understand that there's reasons of why she went back there and why she had to do what she had to do. And we're not going to judge you, and anytime you need help, just come to us and we'll help you out.
Oh, that's got to be a big comfort to people who are in a situation like that. You both mentioned the fact that the cases that actually get called into the police are the tip of the iceberg. And I know the police have, all the policing agencies have done some work this month to talk about the numbers of cases that they actually see. So given that that's the tip of the iceberg, how many cases do you think really are going on that never make it to the level of some kind of legal intervention?
There's so many. I have some of our numbers right here, actually. We served a total of almost 900 people last year. Individuals that were victims of domestic violence, we served 676, and sexual assault victims, we served 185. And even that's the tip of the iceberg, because a lot of people don't know about our services. So, domestic violence and sexual assault is very prevalent in the North Country, just like it is everywhere. And unfortunately, I don't think people understand that. And that's, one of our goals, and that's one of our goals from Domestic Violence Awareness Month, is letting people know the things that are going on in your own backyard. I think the media likes to focus on kind of stranger danger and keep your kids safe, but we know that, in 80% of rapes, it was perpetrated by someone that the victim knows, and maybe even a family member. So, the real strangers, the dangers are lurking in our home, and we need to, make sure that people are aware of that and try to help out when they need it.
Valerie, can you talk a little bit about the population that you serve? Who are these people? Give us
Absolutely.
Give us a thumbnail sketch of who can be the victim of domestic violence.
Okay. Well, domestic violence victims, as well as sexual assault victims, they, nobody is discriminated against. Males, females, children, everybody is, could be a victim. And we serve all men, children, and women. Working with Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but the No More campaign, they outline it very well. They're our mothers, our girlfriends, our brothers, our sisters, children, coworkers, and friends. So they're everybody that we know around the community. And it knows no bounds of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. Everybody can be a victim, and we serve all of those. So
the whole gamut.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit for just a minute. You mentioned being on the St. Lawrence campus a while ago, talking to the public safety officers, and you've done tabling events at the colleges. What kind of services can you offer to college students who often find themselves in this situation? It just seems to be a function of the age group and the population and being away from home, and the alcohol certainly plays a part in all of this. So,
absolutely.
Well, the fact is that 1 in 4 college women will be raped before they graduate college, and that's a service that we can provide when they need help, if that's something that they've encountered, if they need to go to the hospital for a forensic rape exam, or whether they choose to go to the hospital or go to the police station or just no one at all, they can still call us and we can give them their options, which would definitely be going to the hospital. And even if they don't want to press charges, it's still important to go to the hospital and get yourself checked out and make sure, everything's okay health-wise. And then we can go from there and offer them counseling. One thing that I like to note with college students is that maybe a lot of them don't have cars or might not be able to come to Canton to our office, but we can come to their campus, and the counseling centers on campus work really good with us at finding us a room to meet with. We could really meet them anywhere on campus if they wanted to talk to us. We do have our 24-hour hotline, so any time of the day people can reach an advocate and they can get one of us.
And then set up an appointment for a face-to-face meeting if that's what
Absolutely.
needs to be done.
And we always explain that the options that we give them that are out there, because there are a lot when those things happen, are options that they get to choose from. We're not going to ever force anything on them. You know, we lay them out there so they know they're there, and they get to pick and choose based on their own situation, because everybody is different and everyone responds differently. So we make sure that they're aware of that too.
Good. One thing that we know, I'm sure you know it better than anything, is that in any case like this, there are always, everybody knows it's true, but it might not really be true, the sort of myths that surround these areas of domestic violence and sexual assault. I suppose you have a few that you can talk about and tell us why they're myths and what the real facts are.
Yes. I mean, I think one of the biggest myths that I see is like the abuse is mutual. Maybe they both get in arguments or they both fight with each other. And one thing that we stress is that domestic violence isn't mutual. It's a pattern of coercive behavior that is power and control. And the reason it's not mutual is because one person has all the power and control. You know, so even in one instance, maybe both people were yelling at each other and both people were arguing, that doesn't mean on the whole, on the grand scheme of things, that they're both abusers. Because if you delve into it a little bit more, one of them has all the power and control. And maybe, I mean, I've even had instances of physical abuse. I've had a client tell me like, well, you know, I did hit him back, so, but then once I started talking with her more, you know, she's endured a lot of physical violence, and the one time she hit him back was in self